Good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 11th, 2020 Council meeting of Algonquin Highlands. I will call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to undertake the roll call, please.
Councillor Shortreed.
Present.
Councillor Dayu.
Present.
Councillor Berry.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Here.
Mayor Moffat.
I am here. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on today's matter? Being none, excuse me, just a couple of notes. Items 3 being the closed session and 4B, the discussion around the Hardwood Lake Landing Rehabilitation Project have been deferred. Important information related to this matter was received just at the close of business yesterday. So in order for us to have the best and most fulsome conversation on this topic, we will bring that back soon. I just want to confirm to anybody who maybe has tuned in for that part of the meeting that we are absolutely committed to exploring the options and coming up with the best solution on that issue. But we want to make sure we have all the important information that we need to have that conversation, and perhaps just have it once. So those folks will see that issue come back when we review that information received yesterday. So that being said, we have only one item of business today, which is the amendments to the procedural bylaw. And that is the clerk's report, and I'll hand it over to her to take us through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll just briefly highlight some points from the report, and then we'll move on to the draft I've prepared that's highlighted in red. So as Council is aware, on March 19th, Bill 187 amended the Municipal Act to allow for electronic participation to count towards a quorum under the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act. And on May 14th, Council approved the bylaw to participate electronically during the emergency. And since then, we've been having electronic meetings, and they've been fairly successful. And then on July 21st, Bill 197 amended the Municipal Act again. It removed reference to electronic meetings. They're no longer tied to the emergency declaration. They are now more broad and can apply in the bylaw. So the previous amendments in our current procedural bylaw made under Bill 187 no longer apply. So these amendments are before Council to bring our procedural bylaw into compliance. So Bill 187, the amendments, it does indicate that members can participate electronically. However, it's not mandatory that they be included in the bylaw, nor does it have any specific requirements for participation. So the drafts that are the draft that is before Council is highlighting some exceptions to why Council, should they wish to participate electronically. The draft before Council is based on previous discussions held by previous Council regarding electronic participation, and that it was felt that it not be applied broadly to participate without restrictions. One other amendment, Bill 197, also speaks to allowing Council to appoint a proxy holder. This report and draft does not address that. This is just addressing the amendments to proceed with electronic participation should Council wish. Should Council wish to discuss or consider the appointment of a proxy holder, staff will seek that direction from Council and then bring back a further report and more information on this. So that's a summary of the report, and now we can go through the document that has red highlights throughout it, and I'll just start with section 23. We've left in the requirement to participate during a declared emergency, either provincially and or township declared. Then we've added a clause where it's not safe to attend in person, as determined by the CAO in consultation with the mayor, due to a natural weather event, health and safety restrictions, which also include the pandemic, social distancing, quarantining, and any other restrictions set out by the public, local, or health agencies or the province of Ontario. There was another section added related to participation by Council because of medical reasons, illness, or on municipal business. Again, this would apply to Council only and participation in closed, regular, special, public, and emergency meetings. Section 25, there are proposed amendments to increase the notice if council will be participating electronically from 24 to 48 hours, unless extraordinary circumstances apply. Section 27, this is where we remove the reference to emergency declaration as well as reference to Bill 187. If we flip down to section 35, staff is proposing a change to the voting. The proposed change is that should all council be participating via web conference, that the mayor can call for the vote and a show of hands would be sufficient to cast the vote as opposed to calling for a yes or no vote. If council is participating in a combination of video, phone, or all phone, then the vote would be called verbally, yes or no. So that's just a highlight of the amendments, and council is just seeking, or staff is seeking direction to these amendments, and also if they would like further consideration for proxy holder.
Thank you for that. So a couple things I'd like to just quickly take council through is just a clarification that we all understand and agree to the 23C, sort of the medical reasons. I think we need to be clear amongst ourselves what that could or might entail. If you were, unable to attend because you, as happened to me once, broke your leg, or, in this situation, if you had symptoms of COVID or you're waiting for a test, or if you had surgery or something of that nature, I think we would probably, the 3 members of council who had this conversation previously will recall that we had quite a discussion about reasons why someone might not attend a meeting, and the purpose as set out by the clerk is not because you don't feel like going into the meeting once meetings are allowed to be reconvened in this council chambers, or that you're going to zoom in from your holidays or from your balcony in Florida or something. It's meant to be medical reasons, illness, something that's declared by the province, or some other important reason that has been deemed in everyone's best interest. So I know there's been a couple of times historically where the member from the north had a difficult time arriving to the council meetings because of blizzard conditions. And so if we, given those would be considered, I think, extraordinary circumstances, if we knew well enough in advance that person, there was a weather event coming in that might restrict a person from coming to the meeting. So it does allow for those kinds of situations, but just wanted everyone to have a little bit of a chat about that. It's not because you don't feel like it or you've got a headache or a sore toe. It's we're trying to accommodate serious and extraordinary reasons, but still somewhat insist that when possible, members of council will attend in person when such time as those meetings are allowed to happen that way again. So just looking for comments from council on that. Is that what everyone's understanding of this is?
Yes.
Yes.
And everyone's okay with those parameters? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Yeah, I think we need to keep in mind that there is quite a lot involved for staff when we are doing Zoom meetings, and that our reasons need to be solid for why we might not attend.
Yeah, absolutely, fair enough. So if we're clear on that, then the clerk is looking for direction on the idea of the proxy vote, and Councillor Dayu is going to jump right in there. Please go ahead.
Actually, this is on the previous point. I wonder if you could shed some light, or the clerk or anyone on council shed some light on where the concern about COVID fits in. So if we all across the world have various tolerance levels with regards to the risk of COVID. So I wonder if a personal high risk feeling is sufficient to say I'm not coming in, or once council has agreed it is now safe to come in, that it is expected that that individual will come in.
I would defer to the clerk on that. I think that's a really good point. We do know that you're right, across the board, people have varying levels of concern of the COVID symptoms or contracting it. So I think we do want to make sure that this permission toes that, I'm kind of struggling to be honest, toes that fine line of respecting people's personal feelings, but without undue fear mongering, if that's the most respectful way to put it. So we haven't yet had the conversations about when council will reconvene, and maybe that is saved for that, because you're right, if somebody is, of course, if somebody is feeling symptomatic or is waiting for a test or is perhaps lives in a household with someone who has a frontline job that makes them more susceptible, those are legitimate considerations, and I don't know that even the clerk has an answer for that at the moment. Do you have anything to say on that, Madam Clerk?
No. No, only looking at the one provision that health and safety restrictions regarding a pandemic, which physical distancing, if it was felt that it still needed to be in place, then obviously electronic participation.
Yeah, and that makes me, it reminds me that we have had conversations at the EOC around this, and it's my understanding from those meetings that as long as the employer, although we are not employees, but if the employer has implemented all possible measures in accordance with public health recommendations to provide a safe workplace, that employees can't refuse work. So I'd like to think that we are sort of mature and collegial enough group of people to agree that it's time to come back and that we're all going to conduct ourselves accordingly to make it safe for ourselves. I'd like us to be those people. I think everyone would agree with that. Councillor Berry, please.
Is some of this consideration towards us coming back and a council member still participating in a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, so when the time comes that we are going to meet again, reconvene in these chambers, if we knew that there was, a snowstorm warning that was going to go across Highway 60, and it was reasonable to assume that Councillor Dayu would have tremendous difficulty getting here safely, then she could, with enough notice, notify the clerk that she would participate from home. But it's not a matter of getting up in the morning and saying, I just don't feel like it today. Mm-hmm. That's not what it's for. This is to set some very strong parameters for safety, health and safety reasons, medical reasons, and reasons that the average person would say make sense, as opposed to, you can't see my daiquiri on the deck from the cruise ship. That's not what we're doing. Councillor Berry.
I think just a consideration just would be school, because we don't know what's going to happen with the school system. You could be all of a sudden the school has shut down because there's an isolation or there's quarantine or another lockdown. So to me, that's another consideration as well. If your kids are unexpectedly home now.
And so let me play the devil's advocate there, and notwithstanding a pandemic situation, and you're a parent, I'm not, so you have different concerns in your world than I do, and I appreciate that. If there wasn't a pandemic, would you want to or think it's reasonable to Zoom in because you didn't have childcare on a regular day? Because I think that's an important part of the conversation.
No, I guess I'm more talking about the pandemic. Like if your school has to have a quarantine, that means you're not sending your kids to a daycare or your grandparents or that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna go to the clerk again on that, because the clerks in the municipality, in the county, have been working on this together, and the idea is to have the majority of the municipalities have the same provisions for this topic. So I'm going to ask the clerk if she can speak to that.
Yes, that discussion never came up about parameters around the pandemic. I can go back and follow up with the clerks on that. But I'm also, again, reading the section B and C, it does include a pandemic. If there's a reason for the schools being closed due to the pandemic, then it's likely, like, the pandemic is still going on, and it would be my interpretation that would cover a pandemic. We would not more than likely be back in the chambers if the schools are shut down, basically. But I can go back and look, and I can also do some more research to find out if any other municipalities have addressed the COVID or other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, we can continue to refine this, and I think we municipalities make policy for a municipality, not to accommodate individual needs. But I don't wonder in this situation that we might, as a group, further refine our own parameters. I think the thing that's most important is that whether it's for the 5 of us or for the next 5, or the next 5 after that it doesn't become so loosey-goosey that everyone just zooms in from home in their pajamas because they just couldn't be bothered to drive that day. And I'm not saying that any of us are going to do that or that anybody else is, but I think it's important for, the purposes of why we meet and how we meet, and professionalism and transparency, that we craft some of those parameters so that we all fully understand what the limits might be. And so, Councillor Barry, to your point, I think what you're asking about is covered, because in section 23B it does include a pandemic and things that are related there too. So that to me would seem, we would have perhaps your face on the screen and the rest of us might be in the council chambers. I think that's the important part. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
In the circumstance of a storm, say it's really storming bad in the north, and you said that we need to provide adequate time to staff to prepare for that. How much time do they need realistically to set up for someone to participate by Zoom? I'm assuming that we can't call at 8:30 and say I'm not going to be there.
That's right. And as you mentioned earlier in this meeting, that there is a tremendous amount of effort. Lots of people who are doing Zoom meetings, they subscribe to Zoom and they have an account and they just invite people and they have a meeting for purposes of safety and certainly not be in hacking issues. The county IT department runs all of our Zoom meetings, and there's a tremendous amount of work. There is a member of the county's IT department right over there sitting in the council chambers, and there is a person from the county's IT department that personally, physically oversees and manages every Zoom meeting. So there is the time needed for that person to know they have a meeting, know they need to get somebody organized, and maybe that becomes a little bit easier with time. But at the moment, there are some considerations. So we would need to know if there was a weather warning, which we often get well in advance. That's different. But you're saying 48 hours in order for the technology to be arranged and organized appropriately.
And partly of this will come with the other discussion in the future. If council's going to continue to live stream them, then we would already be set up, and I would imagine it would be through the Zoom platform. Should council decide not to live stream and go back to just in person, people show up, then it would be a matter of that member of council just having to call in because we wouldn't be going to the Zoom, they would have to call in on the conference phone.
Okay.
We still need to have those discussions about going forward.
Right, and that's what I was going to say, that there is a report coming forward about that, the council's interest in and wish for continued live streaming. I do know that there's at least one person out there right now who's got their fingers crossed and will continue to do this. So that's coming forward. So maybe we can include that part when that report comes, and maybe have a little more of a robust conversation on that. From what I'm hearing, and certainly from the questions from council, it sounds that we can amend our procedural bylaw if we need to anytime, and this section could be a bit of a changing or moving landscape based on as we move through the pandemic and what comes ahead, second wave or issues with school or what's in everyone's best interest. So maybe instead of trying to nail it all down today, we could agree that what we have in place meets the regulations, legislation as required by the province, and we can continue to have these conversations going forward and further refine what it is we need for ourselves and for the public's best interest in professionalism and transparency. Would council agree to that? And I think the integrity of each of you and certainly myself speaks to that we are not going to be drinking gin in our pajamas from home just because we can. but the language in this and the change of the bylaw does allow for some flexibility reflective of the current situation in the world. So is there anything more from council on the changes as have been amended, notwithstanding the proxy conversation? Councillor Dayu.
It's actually a question related to the gin in your pajamas. Yeah, we have, many of us on council have, over the course of the last year and a half, been away over a council meeting. There's been a holiday that's been, planned that perhaps unavoidably because of a wedding or whatever it might be, it overlaps with a council meeting, and therefore that person does miss it. I think that's happened to possibly 2 or 3 or more of us. So in that instance, is it the preference of the clerk, the mayor, whoever gets that preference, that we do not call in at that time? We do not avail ourselves of the technology there to participate on principle? Or is it better that we do call in? So there's sort of a line between just taking advantage of the technology and simply never showing up because you'd like to be in gin in your pajamas all the time, versus being away from the province on possibly quite legitimate reasons and able to tune in without the gin, without the pajamas. Is there a preference there?
So this goes directly back to the conversation that we had the first time this was made available, and the previous council, and so the decision on the table from the previous council was that when one signs up to run for office, it's expected that they will participate to their fullest, which includes in-person meetings. We did talk about that, and the idea was to not have anybody like call in from their holidays or from their balcony from their condo in Arizona, because the conversation that we had at that time was it's very important for members of council to be present, and the other side of it is for our own health and wellness reasons. If you're on a holiday, you're on a holiday. So I personally feel very, very strongly that calling in from a holiday just because we have the technology is twofold. No, because you really don't know where anybody is or what the time zone might be, and secondly, a holiday is a holiday and people should have some time off. But that was the decision of the previous council that did not include yourself and Councillor Shortreed, and but the document before us is a legislated provision for emergency and medical reasons, which doesn't include holidays. But Deputy Mayor Danielson, what say ye?
Well, I'm just thinking that if you're going to be away and miss a meeting is more what we're concerned about. The discussion that we had previously was related to somebody being gone for a month or more, and that we didn't see that we wanted to say, sure, go away for the winter and call in. We're talking now more about if you have to miss one meeting, and that might fall into the discussion that we have about proxy voting. If, for instance, you're away for one particular meeting but because you can't avoid it, and there's a really important issue that you've got a strong opinion on, that may lead us to decide that we want to allow proxy voting or not. But I think there's other ways to handle it. I agree. If you finally get a chance to go on a holiday, you probably need your holiday, says the girl who hasn't had a holiday for a long time.
Absolutely. Councillor Dayu.
Yes, very much, Deputy Mayor, that's along the lines I was thinking. And perhaps if we even removed the idea of holiday for a moment from that equation, say there's some elder care that has to happen back in BC because someone's parent has gone through an operation and they need support from their adult child for a month. So it's an inevitable thing. You've got to go, you've got to support your parent. It's not a holiday. you're fit as a fiddle. You're not looking for that mental break under those sorts of circumstances where, as the Deputy Mayor said, it's a one-off, it's inevitable one-off. Would that be allowable, permissible?
And I personally think that that's a slippery slope because every person could have something that is deemed to be legitimate by somebody somewhere, and then at what point does a policy like this or a bylaw like this or it's the aspects of it become so flexible that it just becomes a free-for-all.
Yeah.
So I only speak for myself. I've missed all kinds of meetings, and sometimes you miss meetings. That's just the way the world works. Sometimes you can't go to work. I think we need to be really, really careful about over-prescribing the parameters, because everybody will say, but what about this situation? And we will all go, you know what, that's right. That's a good one too. Let's add it to the list. And then suddenly it becomes a free-for-all. So if you, Madam Clerk, just want to speak maybe a little bit about the reasons around this. I mean, it came from the province due to the need to meet during the pandemic. They've decided to leave it in place, but it really is intended for, medical and emergency reasons of the member, not of the member's family, or their neighbor or their dog.
Well, the new legislation passed doesn't prescribe. It doesn't put any parameters around what council may or may not allow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's completely up to council. The section actually reads, either of them can participate electronically in a meeting to the extent and in the manner set out in the bylaw. So they basically left it open for council.
Okay, so it wasn't legislated by the province for emergency reasons. That's what the clerks of Haliburton County have been working on together.
Yes, we did. We discussed that, and part of it came from another review of one bylaw. One municipality already had provisions in there because of Bill 68 going way back, when you could participate electronically but not count towards quorum. So these are just drafts put in front of council for their consideration based on previous discussions, as well as discussions with the clerks and what they felt they were going to bring forward to their councils.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how far council wants to take this conversation. My concern, I mean, where there's 5 of us here, my concern is if we try to over prescribe it for every possible outcome, we'll just end up at home in our pajamas because we felt like it. And I know that's not the intent, but it can just become bigger and bigger and bigger, and all reasons are probably legitimate. Our role, I believe, maybe I'm a little old-fashioned, but our role as elected officials is to show up, to turn up, to be informed, and to have a discussion, hopefully in person, without the encumbrances of distraction that might not contribute to the overall best interest of the conversation. That's not to say that you couldn't be looking after your person in BC and be squirreled away in a back room, but I'm not sure where to take this conversation, to be honest, because I just don't want us to nickel and dime the parameters so much that it takes away from the intent of the work the clerks have done based on their experience. Councillor Dayoub.
I'm actually quite satisfied with the work that the clerks have done on this. I don't have any further amendments to offer. My questions were more in the spirit of, let's truly understand what this means and what this doesn't mean, because this is our opportunity to talk about it. If it doesn't come back up on an agenda for another 5 months, then legally we can't talk about it altogether. So it's really helpful to sort of explore what some of those potential interpretive hiccups could be and get that feedback. So yes, I'm quite satisfied with what's been presented today.
That's terrific. And as I said earlier, I think as the world changes, and this is new to us, and we've certainly come a long way from, personally, I can say in the beginning was absolutely not, we're never doing that, and yet look where we are quite successfully. So I think we just need to keep an eye on the process, and if further refinements are needed, let's be the people that are willing to make those refinements should they arise, and notwithstanding any legislative restrictions. So if everybody's okay with that, then the next one is, and I don't know where this will go, There is an option for the proxy voting, which has been mentioned by the clerk and also by the deputy mayor. And so the clerk wants to know if council is in any way, shape, or form interested in the proxy idea, because if council is, then she would include that in her upcoming report. And I'll get my stake in first and say that I am an absolute flat out no on that, but I'll open it up to council for that. I see Deputy Mayor Danielson's hand up.
I think that we've been working together long enough that if there is an issue of sufficient importance, now I could end up changing my mind on this, that we can talk to each other, that we can provide our points of view to each other if need be, if we're not going to be available for the meeting. And to me, I think that that's sufficient. Now, there might be a time when the issue is important enough and you cannot be there, and the vote, you think the vote is key. Well, we might want to consider it. But, at this moment, I think that we work well enough together that we can talk to each other, pass on thoughts and ideas or comments that will be considered suitably during the course of the meeting.
Yeah, and if I can just interject, I see your hand, Councillor Dayu, and I should sort of clarify why I'm a hard no on this. Part of our obligation and the beauty of the transparency of the way we do our business is we do our research, we read the reports, we talk to people, we come to a meeting, whether we are on a screen like this or in a room. Any one of us, I've done it 100 times myself, is I've gone into a meeting thinking, I think I know where I stand on that. And then another member of council says, they bring a different perspective or drop a different nugget into the conversation. If you don't have the advantage of that, I think in the old days, it used to be called, if you come into a meeting with a predetermined decision without benefit of discussion at the table, I think that's called fettering counsel. So I'm interested that at one time that it was tremendously frowned upon that you wouldn't have benefit of collegial discussion to come to an answer on something, and now you can, because you could just, I could just say to Liz, yeah, no, my vote's no on that. But I didn't hear what Lisa had to say about it, and I didn't hear what Julie's thoughts were from the Village of Dorset. So for me to clarify, that's why I'm a hard no. I think it really gets in the way of the beauty of our process, which is we don't debate the public, we get information from the public and then debate each other where and when appropriate to come to a conclusion. So that's my reason for the no. But anyway, I'll go to Councillor Dayu.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I'm a hard no for those very reasons, and very much agree with what Deputy Mayor Danielson has said. I think we do have a good flow of information between us, information that we all require to go into a council meeting with the right ducks in a row, and that is the key piece. So if you've got ducks that have to be shared and you're not going to be there, make sure you share those ducks, and then they will be represented, and then the people attending will be able to make the right decision with that information. So I concur with both of you, and I would vote no.
Councillors Berry or Shortreed. And I can't see Councillor Shortreed on my little screen here. I apologize if I don't go for hands up or not. But I do see Councillor Berry's hand, so I'll go to Lisa.
I do agree that the conversation at the table is important, and with a proxy vote, you've basically voted before the conversation, which seems sort of counterintuitive. My one thought is there an opportunity for submitting a written perspective on certain issues if need be? Not necessarily a vote, but
Thoughts.
I think that's where the camaraderie and working together of members of council is important to say, and we have done that. There have been times when a phone call's been made in the morning, somebody can't come to a meeting, but I really can you make sure that council knows that I have this is what I heard or what I know or my thoughts. And to what Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Daniel said, I think to me, that should be enough. And I don't know at what point where you start, getting yourself into trouble for having meetings before a meeting. I mean, that's the honest question, so I'm deferring to the clerk again. I mean, written submissions, it's
never happened. We don't have a procedure for that, or.
yeah. And again, I wonder if we are overanalyzing what could be just a simple process for making sure that we work well together to bring information to the table. I'm not sure, Councillor Shorby, did you have your hand up? I'm not sure if you have said anything yet today.
I haven't, but I haven't been, and I'm not on mute. No, I'm a hard no too. I totally agree with everyone. We communicate very well, and I just can't see going that way.
Liz, you have your hand up again, please.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I mean, you all know that I tend to dig my heels in about some things. I think that I've looked at most subjects pretty carefully and come to a conclusion before I come to a council meeting. But I can't tell you how many times I've changed my mind because of something that someone has said, and you just haven't looked at it with that perspective. So I'm right there with the hard no.
Well, that's the hard no then. Madam Clerk, is there anything else that you, other than the other report that you're going to bring forward regarding the continuation of live streaming outside of emergencies and pandemics? Is there anything else that you need direction from council for on this?
No, I don't think so at this time.
Okay, so does anybody have anything else to say at this moment on the procedural bylaw? This has been a great discussion, and it really, I think, opened up again. So here's a discussion that has that we've been able to have all in person that allows us to, become, one step closer to an even better group of people making decisions. So a little bit of irony there, maybe. Anything else from anybody on the procedural bylaw and electronic participation to date? May I have a mover? And so this means that at the next meeting, so Thursday,
Yes.
we will move to show of hands for voting. But today we're still doing the roll call because we haven't adopted it yet. So I need how are we going to approach will movers and seconders then also, I'll still call for movers and seconders for the.
That's fine, that's a resolution. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder for accepting the report on the changes to the procedural bylaw? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of report CO 1020 amendments to Municipal Act Bill 197, procedural bylaw and electronic participation submitted by Don Newhook dated August 11, 2020. Further, Council concurs with the said amendment, directs a bylaw be brought forward for further consideration. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Well, we're done. So confirmatory bylaw.
We're just past the bylaw.
Oh, has the bylaw
Yeah.
now. That's right. There's two resolutions. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaw adoption?
So move.
Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, bylaw 2020-75 being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council. Procedural bylaw be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Now may I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-76 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its August 11th, 2020 special meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
May I have a mover and a seconder for the adjournment? Councillor Dayu. Councillor Barry.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved, council hereby adjourns its August 11th, 2020 special meeting at 9:39 a.m. Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Barry, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, council and staff, for today's meeting.